Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sunday League podcast brought to you as part of our UK NFL Fantasy Football Network. I'm Samit Paul and as always I'm joined by TSL's co-host and co-commish Jack Cowling. Jack, we got the Scott Hansen tweet on Sunday. It read, "See you in 4 weeks." I said I was feeling giddy last week and my excitement levels have just cranked up yet another notch with Red Zone now around the corner again. How's it going, bud?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, really excited. I think sport's almost back, is it? Premier League's obviously coming back this week. NFL less than a month away or thereabouts as well. So it's I'm super excited. My missus is furious because when you start blocking out the calendar and start putting in right Saturday this, Sunday this, and all the rest of it. So I forgot about those internal debates in my household. But mate, can't wait to get going.
To hear it, mate. So we've got another packed episode for you this week. Our one burning fantasy questions segment takes us over to the NFC East and the NFC North as we ask the big question facing each team in those two divisions, and we make a call on their over-under wins predictions. We'll also discuss which of the teams tips to struggle this season, perhaps have the brightest outlook, and which teams or players are under the most pressure. We'll also run through the news recap and all of the big stories over the past week. But first, Jack, let's start with the one burning fantasy question, and we'll begin in the NFC East, and who better than my New York Giants. So the burning fantasy question for the Giants is, where will Malik Neighbors rank among wide receivers? Now, it appears for now, at least, that his recovery has gone really well. He's in contention to return in week 1, and we'll see how that knee is very, very soon. But having said that, I think unless there is an absolute situation of he's on smoke as soon as he comes back, and that link up with Jackson Dart is just insane, I don't think he's touching the top 5 at all of Nakua, Chase, JSN, St. Brown and Lamb if we're going on sleeper projections. I would even say he struggles to break into the top 10 this year or come close to it given the talent involved in that top 10. I have him around the top 15. I know Sleeper have him currently in 17th in the season projections with 186 points. That's around your sort of T. Higgins and Emeka Egbukas. I think that's probably very fair as we wait to see what kind of player he's coming back as after that knee injury. And I think it's the season after that players usually take that leap back to what they were before an ACL. So as much as I will be rooting for him to have one hell of a season, both for the Giants and my fantasy team, I think we get a good Malik Neighbors this year, not the very best just yet. So around the top 15 mark is probably where I would put him. So where do you think Neighbors will rank this season?
Blasphemies. That's I think I've got a higher outlook for him, really. I think the injuries clearly the massive sort of denominator in the room and sort of, like you sort of said, how he looks. But I think if he's going to be ready to go for week 1, and you're obviously banking on a full season, I think. Like you said, they are elite names that you mentioned, sort of certainly in the top 5 and such. But again, if I was him, that's where I would be in that 5 to 10 range is sort of what I would be targeting. I think he was sort of averaging wide receiver 9 levels before his injury. 2024, he was wide receiver 7 in half PPR. And I think, like you said, the injuries is the big thing. But I also sort of think the roster, the schedule, the coaching that he's all coming back into and the whole setup, it's got to be, again, you obviously watch the Giants a hell of a lot more than me, but it must be the best situation he's ever going to play in and such. And so if he's shown that he can hit those sort of levels as a rookie, or as a sophomore in pretty dire situations and all the rest of it, surely this year, again, all being well with the injury, then he's good to go. And as sort of say, I think for me, the talent levels he showed is top 5 sort of competing with that sort of level. Again, it would be hell of a hard for him to get in that top 5, but I certainly think 5 to 10 is the range that I'm expecting him to get back to. Just really excited to see him go and just really hope that he is, he's 100% health and sort of fully firing right from the off.
I certainly hope you're right. Like I said, I think probably maybe a little bit pessimistic more on my side with the injury, but also having seen Jackson Dart get absolutely blasted in a sack in the preseason game on the weekend, that did not fill me with confidence. But hopefully Neighbors does exceed my expectations at least.
Is Jameson still back up? Sorry,
is Jameson?
Yeah. Russ obviously went on and stuff, but is Jameson still? So again, fantasy wise and probably for Malik, that in a bad backup because we know he just loves to sling it as well. So yeah, be interesting. But obviously, hopefully, Dart stays on the field as well.
So the over-under wins line for the Giants is currently at 7.5. Now, I would love to be more optimistic about both Neighbours and the Giants, but I'm going with my head and not my heart here. And I actually think they will be under.
Oh,
I think
who is this guy? Who is this guy?
I think I said last week that I think they'll have an okay season this year. John Harbaugh's influence starting to take effect. But I honestly think it's next season that you'll see a winning Giants team ready to make some noise. I've got them going 7-10 at best this season, looking at the schedule. There's some horror matchups with the Rams, Texans, Seahawks, Lions. And then you've got the divisional games with the Cowboys and Eagles as well. There's enough winnable games to get close to that line. I definitely think they'll be there or thereabouts. But unfortunately, I am saying just under. What did you go with?
I just love the idea of 26, 27. Your dynasty finally comes in. You go to the final. The Giants are in the Super Bowl. And it's like you're just projecting this mega year next year. Yeah, like you said, I think they've priced it perfectly in tough. So it was a tricky one. But I went for the over. I just think, yeah, there's lots of pieces to really like on the team now, and I do think the coaching setup, they're that experienced and that good that I would expect a bump from that. It's not sort of a new coach. It's not sort of a play caller who's stepping into a first round. These are seasoned vets at delivering winning seasons and all the rest of it. A little bit like mate he was over at Steelers. Sorry, his name just escaped me. There was Tomlin, who was obviously there for years, etc. I think these guys just know how to produce winning seasons and things. And I just think I'm really excited to see, the defense in particular. Just so many potential weapons and exciting pieces on that side of things. And again, I'm not entirely convinced by Dart is sort of the level you truly want, but Neighbours being back and some of the off-season pieces likely at tight end and obviously who else they've sort of brought in as well to sort of fill out the offense. I don't think it's it's not an astonishing attack and everything, but I think it should be enough offense to sort of complement if the defense can be kind of what they look like on paper. So the G-Men are definitely one of the teams to watch, certainly early on in the season for me. And yeah, it sounds like I'm a little bit more buoyant on them than yourself.
Looking at our poll, 11 went over and 15 went under. So more love than I sort of expected for the Giants, but more think under. I was going to say I've taken it personally that 15 voted under, but considering I did it doesn't really stack up. So good stuff. So up next is the Washington Commanders, and the burning fantasy question for them is, will Stephon Diggs or Antonio Williams be their wide receiver too? Now that is assuming Terry McLaurin will be Jaden Daniels' best friend. Will it be the experience of Diggs or the youth of Williams who comes in next? What do you think?
I think it's Diggs all day long for me. I think, great that Williams is sort of getting positive reports out of training camp, along as obviously with some post-draft hype, especially from your boys, so me, and stuff. But I just think Diggs is just a legit vet. As I said, kind of taken. I appreciate lots of people are a little bit, here and there with him as a character and everything like that, and some of his off-field stuff. But just he, on the field, he's a legit vet. We showed with the Patriots, he still has loads to give, and I think it's one of those funny things, like with him and sort of Scary Terry and Diggs. They might not be the youthful wide receiver tandem that you're kind of like, yeah, this is our set up for the next few years, but in terms of what they should be able to do this year and give Jaden Daniels, I think it's a hell of a lot. And sort of trusted reliability, that they know the routes that they can run, they can still go and win the ball. I think that's actually quite a solid pairing and such. I think Williams, again, it seems quite exciting stuff, but I think you're kind of looking at him to hopefully jump ahead of the like Luke McCaffrey or whoever to sort of be the third option. But I'd be pretty astonished if Diggs wasn't the clear number two. Or sort of him and Scary Terry being fairly even. And again, I do think Terry, just because of the relationship and everything, will be the lead. But I could see them kind of sharing similar workloads.
Complete agreement with you. As you mentioned, having drafted Antonio Williams, I'm obviously going to be hoping that it's him, but I did draft him knowing that the Commanders were going to make a Diggs-like move at some point. It seemed pretty obvious that they needed more in that wide receiver room for Daniels. I am excited by what Williams could offer in that offense, but again, exactly like you said, Diggs just offers a very reliable, steady, experienced head in there, favourable option for Daniels to sort of score steadily week on week. So yeah, I agree. I went with Diggs. But But if we at least get some signs of Williams being a long-term star, that would be lovely. And that would definitely be a boost for my fantasy team.
Was Diggs already off your waiver wires in your league? Do you know? And such, or did someone kind of go and pick him up once he got selected?
No, he was already taken, already gone by the time I went to check. So.
I think everybody sort of felt quite confident he was obviously going to land somewhere. And again, not necessarily someone you want to be starting all the time, but again, in sort of your super flex roles and stuff, solid pickup.
Great. The over-under wins prediction line for the Commanders was also at 7.5. What did you go for here, Jack?
So I went under for the Commanders. I think, Jaden Daniels is a huge reason for obviously their sort of boom and bust potential, I suppose. And hopefully we get a fit season of him. He's a really exciting quarterback. And yeah, you don't want his momentum to be too derailed because, again, at one point he was sort of, Lamar Jackson, Mark II, wasn't he, sort of territory where he was coming through. But I just think that maybe the overperformance from him and the whole team and sort of the rookie might have just gotten sort of expectation too high. Dan Quinn seems as though he's one of the coaches with sort of more pressure going into the season. We've obviously had the big injury with Tunsil recently. And I just think there are quite a lot of roster question marks. Again, I quite like the look of their defense. I think that does look like it should be a good unit and stuff. But running back route, again, I just think there's quite a lot of question marks. And again, I sort of, when I kind of looked along it, they're one of those I could just feel maybe having a bit of an underwhelming season, where others may kind of overachieve. I could just see them potentially, coming just under that 7.5.
We are back to singing off the hay sheet from last week. Like you said, same reasons. Fascinating team in the sense that 2024 they went 12-5, reached the NFC Championship game. Last season it flipped on its head. They finished 5-12, and obviously Daniels getting injured was a major reason behind that. Agree with you. Top defense looks like one at least, but there's still question marks for me over the running backs. If they can offer enough to sort of be a real threat in the ground game. I'll also be rooting for Katron Allen's emergence this year as well. I drafted him, but again, I know this is a bit lazy and it's the same for every team. But like I said, if Daniels goes down again or even McLaurin for a lengthy run, I just wonder about them. I just think it really impacts them negatively. So I absolutely went on under for Washington. And that was reflected in the TSL poll. Just 5 said over and 20 voted under. So not many feeling good about the Commanders this season.
No, I think that's a fair reflection.
On to the Philadelphia Eagles next then. And the one burning fantasy question I have for them is, who will be their wide receiver 1 in a post-AJ Brown era? So the big dog has gone. He's off on a new adventure in New England. It wasn't all smooth sailing for him in Philly. But in the first couple of seasons he was there, he was a really big scorer before the injuries and the off-field sort of distractions came into the equation. But his departure does leave a massive hole in that offense. Jalen Hurts will be looking for a new top target. Devonta Smith obviously seems best placed, given he's been around for a bit already, and perhaps is now ready to step out of Brown's shadow to be the main guy. But then you have also got rookie Mekhi Lemon. He's getting plenty of praise coming out of college. Dontavian Wicks is getting a few mentions, perhaps a dark horse in this conversation, but I don't really think he'll come into the equation. So I think surely it's going to be one of Smith or Lemon. Lemon is dealing with an injury through preseason, which isn't ideal, building up that understanding with Hurts. But I think it's Smith's role to lose, and he'll finish top of the Eagles wide receiver rankings. What say you?
Yeah, 100%. This is definitely Smith's team. Now, he should be the clear number one. And I just love this opportunity for him. He's already delivered numerous sort of 1,000-yard seasons. He clearly has the best chemistry with Hurts from all the wide receivers, given obviously how long he's been there now. And I think probably has the best chemistry with Hurts in this era of the Eagles as well. Like you said with Brown, he's obviously had some big seasons, but Smith has sort of been a constant go-to, even when the offense, people getting frustrated with the lack of ball in the air and sort of Brown's lack of touches and stuff. Smith has just always sort of steadily delivered alongside Hurts. So yeah, I can't wait to see what he does in a more prominent role and sort of really intrigued to what his ceiling could be. Again, he's sort of always been a bit more of like a 15 to sort of 25, I guess, that sort of level wide receiver, but very much in a prominent wide receiver 2 role and such. So, you increase that upload. I'm really intrigued to see what he does because he's, just a really fun player to watch and everything. So, like you said, the rookies, the other additions, should be good and sort of help support that. Lemon, it's all been a bit underwhelming, again, for all the hype that we've kind of got from around the NFL, especially with rookie wide receivers and everything like that, it's been particularly quiet, hasn't it? And sort of a little bit sort of, you've heard of a few struggles and things. And again, you don't know if that's sort of playing possum a little bit and all the rest of it. But I don't think anyone's going to really contest it or kind of get near to the workload that Smith should get. And so it should be really cool to see.
The over underline for the Eagles sits at 10.5. And this one was really easy for me. It wasn't reflected in the poll, which I'll get to in a minute, but putting my bias and dislike aside for the Eagles, I just don't see them clearing this at all. There's too many question marks for me. Is Hurts going to have an elite year, or is his fantasy regression at least going to continue? Saquon, is it a bounce back year, or is it more like the 2024 version of him rather than last season's? There's changes on defense. And then the biggest question of all, Jack, obviously, is has Big Dom lost his aura? Sort of all adds up for me, and I say under on the Eagles. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I fully expected myself to say under. Again, it was sort of, like you said, when I first looked at it, I just thought, yeah, no, that'd be under. But then the more I looked into it, like their defense, it has about as much star power as anybody in the NFL. Like they're legit, like that is a complete unit. Again, with a few people coming back on both on their lines. I just think they're kind of, I don't know, like I guess in like Premier League terms, when you've got like a big four or big five, or heaven forbid anybody begrudges us Spurs for being in the big six. But like when you've got that team, they've been one of the most consistent teams over this period of time. The head coach obviously hasn't seemed great, but they have brought in another offensive coach. But obviously things have finally sort of shaken out that way. Barkley, again, I've said numerous times how big a season I think he's going to have. I just think I just expect them to get over that. I just expect them to be double digits, and I do think that they'll probably just get over this 10.5. So I think they've averaged sort of 12.5 wins over the last 4 years, and that's sort of, again, I think when you think of Eagles, that's sort of what I think. I just think that they are in that sort of 11, 12, 13, that sort of territory, and I think they haven't lowered the floor enough for me to think that'll be any different. So I'll go over.
TSL poll, we've got 12 who voted over and 15 said under. And then to finish off the NFC East, we go to Dallas and the Cowboys. Staying on the wide receiver theme here then, Jack, my one burning fantasy question. In a crowded kitchen, will both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens cook? What do you think? Can they coexist and both get their fantasy points, or is it one or the other?
I think they both will. Yeah, I think I don't know if you've seen sort of Lamb himself sort of talking recently, where he was like, "Oh, we're going for like records. We want to be sort of the best duo. Have the best year a duo's ever achieved and things like that." And it has that star power. I think Lamb, he does still hold the higher sort of ADP position, and I think that's because of people sort of trusting his consistency. I think with Pickens, there is that concern of, is a drop off coming? Is there going to be, something's going to happen? But Pickens is a beast, man. Again on the field, I think you can very much put down the Steelers' issues rather than anything himself as to why maybe he didn't quite get to the heights he wanted to there. But yeah, last year he was unbelievable, and I think a lot of the projections have them almost neck and neck, and it's hard to separate them. I think obviously the shared workload will kind of restrict either of them from probably challenging for sort of wide receiver one territory and stuff, but they should both be top 15, sort of targets for themselves, and probably top 10 as well, potential, given the way they play. Again, if Dak's fit and healthy, the way that they sort of move the ball and everything like that. I think they're both going to cook, I suppose. I don't know. Do you have them as sort of the best duo in the league? Are they sort of, do you hold them in that high regard, or sort of you got other tandems that you prefer?
No, I agree with you. I think that seems like the standout duo. I fear that they both will cook. It's kind of weird, because as a Giants fan, I feel like I should really dislike the Cowboys and Eagles like equally, but I think it's actually because I quite enjoy watching the Cowboys at times. Like, they're an entertaining watch, so I don't mind them as much. And so I think Lamb and Pickens will both cook, absolutely. As you've mentioned, Pickens, amazing last season, 245 points. Lamb was injured, limited to 14 games, but still 163 points on the board. And exactly like you mentioned, the big reason why I do say they both will cook is because it's Dak Prescott. He's going to sling that ball for fun, try and find them both. And, that's exactly why I would say that they're both going to cook. I think we even said last week, didn't he? Prescott got one vote in our MVP poll for that reason. So I think it could be that kind of season for him and the Cowboys, being fancied by many. So I think they're both going to get their share.
And I think as well, they've got Ferguson at tight end. The running back room isn't necessarily strongest, but it's got enough. Again, it's sort of not like defenses can only plan for these two, and then their individual talent to create separation and catch some ridiculous balls and everything like that. It just they're so elite. So it'll be exciting to see.
The over-under on the Cowboys is 9.5. This is an easy over for me. They've got the offensive weapons, as you mentioned there. Got a daunting defense that's being hyped up a lot. Brian Schottenheimer is a year into it and settled. I think they're primed for a big, big season. I've got them top of the NFC East with 10 wins easily and more. It's always the question with the Cowboys, though, isn't it? How far can they go? So many years away from the big dance. I'm still not convinced they can go all the way in the postseason. But as far as the regular season goes, I think over 9.5 very easily. How about you?
I say over 2. I'm probably a little bit tighter. Again, at first I was sort of like, smash the over. But then, as I do just feel, like I said, sort of pretty high-headed into the season. But the offense, we know what we've got and everything. I guess sort of the defense, obviously post Micah Parsons and all the rest of it is sort of where they're striving. But I like the acquisitions they've made. They have put money into that. I think they will get coached up and that should improve. So, I think they should just about get there. I think they won 7 last year and they just seem a bit more of like a sensible organization. So rather than sort of expecting them now they've done this, they're going to get up to 13, 14 or whatever, I just think they'll get to about 10 wins, as kind of climb 9, and maybe they're on just a more traditional trajectory to kind of get to obviously the end goal where they want to. I appreciate there's certain time frames that they want to probably go in, especially with Dak and everything. But I'd like to think that they'll just have a really strong, steady year and probably just get into double figures.
I know we're going to have more on this next week when we talk contenders and Super Bowl predictions and whatnot, but what do you make of them postseason? Do you think they've got a shot of going all the way, or is it too much?
Again, once you get there, it's sort of, again, you've got to see how it shakes out, who you're playing and obviously matchups and all the rest of it. I think they've got a chance. I certainly wouldn't put them in the top tier. I don't know if I'd put them in sort of the next. There's just, again, at this time of year, there's so many good teams, isn't there, and all the rest of it. And you're kind of trying to check it out. Again, I probably this year would want to see more from their defense and just some continued evolution from the coaching, setup, which is obviously still fairly new and everything as well. So I'd maybe put them as, again, first round, maybe second round, but any more than that, I think that they've certainly gone over par.
To the polls we go then, and this was pretty clear. 21 voted over 9.5 and just 5 voted under.
I can understand everyone's sort of confidence in that. And again, it like we've sort of mentioned a few times, it just seems a little bit more of a grown-up organization this year headed into this for some reason. And it'd be good to see, because if they can keep the excitement levels and then pair that with some strong strategies and obviously defense, then let's see where they can go.
Good stuff. So let's move over to the NFC North now then and start with the Minnesota Vikings. My one burning fantasy question for the Vikings is, with Kyler Murray now installed as their QB1 over JJ McCarthy, is it comeback season for Justin Jefferson? What do you reckon?
My boy. I reckon it is. I think I was quite surprised when I was looking into it. He still hit 1,000 yards last year, which it just shows you sort of what his floor is as a player. Again, we kind of talk up certain players for getting over 1,000 stuff and providing, what the trash that sort of he had to deal with last year and stuff, to still hit 1,000 yards. It's great. He only hit 2 touchdowns. I'm sort of betting the farm on a bounce back, really. I think Murray has historically been pretty good at feeding sort of the primary target. And again, I think with a few of the additions that they've made in the wide receiver room, I think there's been quite a lot of talk of how they're going to mix up their running game actually this year and kind of actually try and install a decent running game. I think their offense should just be more dynamic. And JJ's a Hall of Fame talent, isn't he? And I'm just expecting to bounce back and kind of put his name both fantasy and real world conversations as sort of the best wide receiver in the league. Again, whether or not he reaches that, I don't know, but I think he's going to be back in the mix.
I did not know he reached 1,000 yards last season. That's
Scary.
mental. So yeah, I was just going to say that I thought it was a quiet season last year, sort of based on his usual high standards. We've seen him put up massive fantasy numbers, particularly in 2021, 2022. You're looking at sort of 275 points and then 304 points in those 2 seasons. 2023 was a down year, but that was due to injury, only featured in 10 games. Then he bounced back strongly in 2024. And then, as you mentioned, then came the Vikings quarterback problems last year, just an absolute mess. And JJ McCarthy, rightly so, not QB1 this year, judging from what we saw of him last season. It is Kyler Murray's offense now. He's been installed as QB1, as I said. I don't particularly rate Kyler very highly. I just don't really think I was that impressed in the latter stages of his time with the Cardinals, and that sort of skews my opinion on him. But it's a big improvement on what they had last season, that's for sure. So yes, I do believe we will see a comeback season for Jefferson. He benefits from Murray's presence at quarterback. And so, yeah, I think your boy is back.
Yeah, and again, Murray, I think it's one of those. It's sort of, you obviously hope you're going to get the best Murray there, but I'm just kind of banking on him, just like you said, being a steady, middling quarterback. He can extend plays with his legs. I think the longer a play goes on, the more likely Jefferson's probably going to be able to find some space or kind of get to areas that he wants to get to and everything like that. So hopefully he will at least give the platform for JJ to at least try and be back amongst it.
The over-under line for the Vikings is 8.5. What do you have for them, Jack? Over or under?
Yeah, I went over on them. I sort of had a back and forth on it again, really. I found a lot of the ones for this week pretty tricky, but ultimately, I just trust the elite coaching staff. A year of, as I sort of hopefully reasonable quarterback play with Murray to get them over. They could be a potential dark horse contender. Again, it's easy to forget sort of again how elite the coaching is. Again on the defensive side of things, it's massive. And I don't, as I sort of say, I don't think Murray needs to be Superman for the rest of the roster to actually excel. So 8.5 I thought was not necessarily kind of comfortable for them to get over, but I do think that is a number I would go for the over.
So I am going against the grain, both you and the poll. The poll results were as follows: 15 voted over and 12 voted under. So split opinion on the Vikings in our group, but I'm just not seeing it with the Vikings. I think 8.5 is low, so they'll definitely have a shot at it. But like I said, I don't think Kyler is the answer to all of their problems. And I know you mentioned the running game. There might be positives there, but I just think it's still Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason in the backfield. So, okay, they've added Juwan Jennings to the mix behind Jefferson and Addison, TJ Hawkinson as well. They've got weapons there to score points, but I just don't know what it is. I just don't really rate them that highly to get to the 9 wins this season. I think they'll fall just a touch short of that.
It's a really tough division as well, isn't it? It's one of those where, again, I think these are sort of problematic. I'll say sort of with almost all of them, I almost start with over for everyone, unless I think they're trash. And then you're like, well, they can't all be out because they're all playing each other, some of them twice or whatever. And then you figure it out. So, I do get it. And I think certainly last year was a reasonable year to build some distrust in what they were. But again, they've been a good side in this iteration before. And again, I think if they can get some solid play out of Murray, I think they'll just do it.
So on we roll to the Chicago Bears next then. And my one burning fantasy question for the Bears is, can Colston Loveland topple his tight end rivals and emerge as the best tight end in the fantasy business this season? What are your thoughts on Loveland, Jack? I know you've been high on him from last season. Do you think he can do it?
I really love him as a player and such. I think, again, him and Warren coming out, and again, as someone that doesn't watch college, but obviously just then watches tapes and, sort of rookie analysis and everything like that going into drafts. I ended up taking Loveland over Warren in one of my teams last year. And there's certainly that first sort of 6 months, I was like, oh no, what have I done? Because Warren just came out flying and Loveland didn't. But I think the second half of last year obviously showed that his talent it deserves him to be right in that conversation. I don't think he'll quite get there for me. I just think usage, again, I could really see a world where he is sort of the lead target and everything, but I just think there's enough other guys to still be on the roster who are going to get their looks and sort of get the big plays and everything like that as well. So I just think with him, he's probably right in the mix with sort of Kraft, a fit George Kittle, if he's sort of guys who sort of can challenge. I still think McBride and Bowers are sort of your top dogs still. And Johnson did help Laporta excel, and I could see the opportunity potentially being there for Loveland, kind of going on sort of the running he did last year. But I just think the others might just, when I look at their rosters, I think they might just have more prominence and sort of, opportunity. So I don't think he will quite get there, but I definitely think he's right in the mix as sort of the next guy up.
You hacked into my notes. Need to stop sharing this Google Doc.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with everything you've just said. So 136 points in 16 games in his rookie season. So much hype, support backing him to be an elite tight end as he continues to develop and improve his game, which I think he will. Caleb Williams is a quarterback. He continues to improve as well. So I think that can only be good things for him. But like I said, competition for targets with the likes of Luther Burden, Rome Odunze and others. I think he builds on last season and hauls in a bigger points tally, but will it be enough to finish above the likes of Bowers and McBride in particular? And then, like you mentioned as well, maybe even the likes of George Kittle. I didn't think of Kraft, but Kraft, and maybe even Sam Laporta, if he has a comeback season. Is he going to sort of nestle into that group? So, I don't think he's going to topple all of them and finish top, particularly Bowers and McBride. I think they'll see so much of the ball that they'll score heavily this season. So, I have Loveland sort of settling into that third spot or thereabouts this year. I think that's probably a fair reflection.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I said, there's other... Fannin and like lots of people in contention, but I do think Loveland, showed a hell of a lot last year.
So the over/under wins line for the Bears is at 9.5. What did you go for here, Jack?
The Bears, I went over. I think they went 11-6 in Johnson's first season, and I don't know. Yeah, again, it's one of those. I think the bookies get a lot of these right, but I was just a little bit surprised to be honest with you. They sort of offered it up at 9.5. So, I don't know if you saw Johnson's comments where he's sort of talking about, most teams were talking about wanting to get to a Super Bowl, whilst he wants to have the greatest offense of all time. He wants to go on the longest winning streak of all time. He wants to be, he's talking like, he wants all these. And I just think it shows, what a madman, how self-confident he is. And again, I think that first year as a head coach, it's hard to argue that he's not going to back it up really. So, I think it was just a really impressive first year. I think as per our Players Award last year, some people thinking Caleb could potentially step up as sort of a viable MVP candidate. So you add that into the mix with lots of, nice parts and stuff. Again, I still don't think it's just one of the strongest rosters in the NFL and such, but I just think potential and the coaching setup and things, they should do. And I definitely got them getting into double figures, so it's over for me.
Wasn't it him? He started beef with the Packers coach.
Yeah, it just like brings it up. It's great. Like goes from every chance.
Agreed. So it's over for me as well. I don't consider the Bears as a sort of contender to go all the way this season, although I think they are moving towards that under Ben Johnson. But I do think they'll rack up wins in the regular season. 10 or more is definitely achievable with the talent that they've got on the roster on both sides of the ball. Health will be crucial, as it is with every team, I suppose. But I know they've had one or two injury setbacks this summer already. But I think they look like a solid team, capable of consistently being in the mix to win this division. So, definitely over for me. And for the Bears in our poll, 19 votes for over and just 6 for under. So, Bears being back to have a successful season there as well.
Yeah, I think they're definitely one of the sort of ascending teams that everyone's got their eyes on.
So the Green Bay Packers are up next, and the one burning fantasy question for them is, will Matthew Golden live up to the summer hype? So we've heard loads on Golden since the end of last season. Even those inside the franchise keep talking him up in his role for this season, as they expect a big jump from him. A really modest rookie season, 55.5 points in 14 games. But the room has sort of been cleared to an extent to open that pathway for him. That said, I'm still not quite seeing that big a jump from him. You've got Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and perhaps most importantly of all, Tucker Kraft are still there. And while sure, Golden has to take a step up from last season, I don't think that's going to be particularly hard for him. But I don't see him becoming this stud that the Packers think he will be this year. It could happen next season and beyond He's still only 23, but I just think the top option in the passing game could change week to week with this team. So it's a no for me. What about you?
I think Green Bay, they need him to do. So, yeah, no wonder. I think they're kind of trying to get his confidence up and all this sort of chat and everything. But no, I think I'm with you. Like you said, sort of the rookie year, he's got some underlying sort of separation stats that look pretty healthy and pretty good and stuff. But there just wasn't a lot of juice there or sort of any or much tape at all, really, to kind of get too excited by or sort of kind of, see maybe the potential that you want to, where you're like, okay, it's coming. It's just going to take a bit of time to figure it out and things. I think, like you said, sort of Dubs and Wicks and everyone were nice complementary pieces that sort of left. So those targets need to be taken with someone. But like you said, Kraft should be healthy, hopefully, and maybe could eat into those. Watson's obviously the number one. But I don't know. Yeah, I think I need to see some more before I sort of believe that, that there's really there. I think, again, sort of wide receivers are sort of player positions where they do stand out at this time of year, because I think defensive backs and defenses generally aren't going necessarily 100%. So it's quite easy for sort of the skill players to maybe stand out a little bit. But I say I'm not. He's not someone that's particularly on my radar that I really think is going to have a huge leap. You'd expect the numbers to go up just with opportunity and everything. But I think I just want to see a bit more.
So the Packers over-under wins line is also at 9.5. And again, it's a hard no from me. I think they've got talent, and Matt LaFleur is obviously a top coach. He's got this team contending in recent seasons, but I just feel they don't have enough to challenge at the top of this division. You've already mentioned it. This is a really, really difficult division. So I'm going under. I know they've got the Micah Parsons factor when he returns from injury, but it's just not enough for me to be confident that they'll go over, even though I've seen sort of expert opinion elsewhere actually really back them to push their rivals near the top of the NFC North. And even in our poll, so the Packers got 11 voted for over, 14 went under. And honestly, that's more than I expected for over, to be honest. Maybe I'm just missing it. I don't know. But others definitely have more confidence in the Packers than me, for sure. So what did you go for?
I went under. I don't feel great about it. Like you said, I really rate Matt LaFleur. But he was a weird one where sort of there was chat that he may even leave and things like that at some point. Again, there was some teams sort of right at the start of the coaching cycle and things like that. They were like, well, maybe he's going to become available and things like that, which would seem pretty crazy because, he's clearly a really talented coach and stuff. Micah Parsons, like you said, hopefully will return fit. And I think he's, again, sort of a true superstar. But just question marks, loads of other places. Like you said, sort of the wide out room, the sort of running back room. Obviously, Jacobs got injured, isn't he? And all the rest of it. I think Marshall Lloyd, they're sort of talking again, trying to get a bit of hype behind him, and all the rest of it. I think they're one of those steady teams. I don't feel great about going under just because, again, there is an element a bit like what I was saying with Eagles, with sort of the know-how and the experience and the ability to sort of win tight games or kind of win enough games to get you to where you want to be and all the rest of it. But I just think I don't know. Like, am I excited to watch them? I don't think so. And like Love's one of those quarterbacks. Again, for me, a lot of people kind of put in. Again, I was listening to a podcast. Can't remember who it was, and they were debating whether they'd have Love or Herbert, and I was just like, "Am I absolutely on?" Like, I was like, "What the heck?" Like, that's not even a question for me. Do you know what I mean? Again, there's no way I'd put Love anywhere near that, and I think. Again, we haven't really seen a sort of an elite season out of him at all. There's definitely nice plays and games and everything like that. But have they actually done that well with him as a leading quarterback? I don't think so. So anyway, go on a different tangent of how much I love Herbert differently. But I don't know. I just think Jordan Love to me is more close to the middle of the pack than he is the top quarterback. So for me, ultimately, as much as I kind of probably the name, the Packers and sort of the history makes me want to go over, but I'm with you. I'd go under.
Completely agree with you on Love and the Packers. So cue Jordan Love MVP and Packers 17 and that. And then finally, let's turn our attention to the Detroit Lions. My one burning fantasy question for them is, how many points will Jahmyr Gibbs score this season? What are your thoughts on this one?
I could just tell how excited you are about Gibbs and what the potential he could do. And everything. So I'm sure you did have a quick look. So 2023, I had him down. He got 216. 2024 is first real, mega year, 338. last year 328, so a slight drop off. So they're big numbers, and obviously that is with a shared workload, with Montgomery and everything. So it's again, what sort of numbers could he get? So the one I looked at was McCaffrey. Again, that's sort of who I think of when you really think of sort of the most dominant running back, across the NFL in terms of sort of the workload they get and everything. So I had a quick look over sort of McCaffrey. McCaffrey hit 370 points last year, which is, again, just mind-boggling. I'm like, disrespect sometimes I put on his name, when you're doing the top running backs, you're like, it's probably going to be that guy, isn't it? He's showing like, again, when he gets the role he does and everything, when he's actually fit and healthy. But then I looked over his career and sort of had a quick look of, is that consistent for McCaffrey? And obviously injuries are his big thing. He hit 360 in 2023 when he was also running back one. So again, Gibbs hasn't got to those numbers yet. But in 2019, when McCaffrey was at Panthers in 16 games, hit 415 fantasy points. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, yeah, imagine, I don't know, whoever drafted him that year. Again, that was just before I sort of kind of got into it. I think that might have been the year before I got into it. But I was like, that is league winning like output, isn't it? Sort of thing. So again, is Gibbs going to be able to get to 415? I'd maybe not say, I'd probably say no, but he probably needs to be in that contention for that sort of 350 to 380 range, if he wants that RB1 and sort of, again, with the added workload and everything, that's sort of where he wants to be. So again, if you were to force me on a number, I could see him, maybe 360 is maybe where I'd go. So jump up of about 30 points, which doesn't seem huge given the sort of workload you'd expect, but also I think they are going to have to run, again, there is a certain maximum workload you can do without him kind of, with him still being as effective as as you want him to be. So I think sort of 360 and certainly in contention for that RB1.
I am 1,000,000% changing my password on my notes. I did exactly the same thing as you. I went through sort of the points and CMC. I looked at his points tally from last year. As you say, though, absolute freak in that 49er situation. Just saw him get the ball so much in both the running and passing game. I think that will be out of reach just about. I looked at Saquon Barkley in 2024 as well. His tally of 338 points. I think we'll see Gibbs around that mark. And as you say, that's where he's sort of been over the last couple of seasons. But complete agreement with you. I think he'll break through the 350-ish barrier. I would be confident in him scoring more, but I also then just look at the weapons that the Lions have got, and the ball has to be shared as well. You've got St. Brown, Williams, Laporta, and others. I think that's probably what will hold Gibbs back from getting up to that sort of really, really top level, closer to CMC and Panthers levels. So he won't be far off it in terms of the 365, but I think 350-ish for Gibbs this season.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And like you sort of say, it's like there's only so many touchdowns that can go around, isn't there? Sort of territory. So whether or not that ultimately, kind of his actual sort of touchdown numbers are what stop him kind of getting to those insane levels and all the rest of it, that could be it. But again, would you be underwhelmed if he came in less? What it says last year, we said sort of 328. If he was at those sort of numbers again, 320, 330. Would you be underwhelmed? Again, full fit season, all the rest of it, or do you still think, again, that is still obviously top tier running back output? So would you be quite content with that still?
I think I'd be content with it, but there would be a tinge of disappointment purely because, as you mentioned, with Montgomery out of the way and sort of how they're billing Gibbs to really kick on now. Said last week, Dan Campbell saying they've only scratched the surface of his talent. So I think if he was to sort of level out at what he's already put out in the last couple of seasons, it would be a bit like, meh. It's a bit more of the same, I guess. But I think, I do expect him to sort of top that and go kick on a little bit further than that.
Yeah, like I said, mate, it's going to be great.
So the over-under line for the Lions is at 10.5, and this was a very easy over for me. I have them winning the division. They have a favourable schedule. As we've mentioned, the talent and offense is insane. You'd think they'd surely have better luck with injuries than they did last season. That's what really sort of held them back and disrupted them. It's not all on the shoulders of Dan Campbell. He's got his new coordinators in, freshening things up, and hopefully sort of for them at least, moving on from the Ben Johnson era and finding answers. I think we're primed to see the Lions bounce back and really, really contend this year. And I think they clear 10.5 very, very easily. The final poll that we had was the Lions was 20 voted over and just 5 voted under. So many believe the Lions are going to have a strong regular season. What about you?
I'm with you. Yeah, I think, like I say, sort of tough year last year, but I love Dan Campbell, and I think this is still one of the best rosters in the NFL when healthy. I think, everyone loved the Lions when they were on their ascension and everything, and obviously a few little playoff blips and then obviously some injuries is kind of, maybe taking a little bit of shine off them and everything like that. But this schedule could be exactly what they needed and all the rest of it. And, we saw what the Patriots did with an easier schedule last year and stuff. So I think they should be really vying for, that first overall in the NFC, where, again, it's going to be tough for them to get it. But that's where I see them get that bye in the first round of the playoffs. And then, a genuine sort of contender from there. So, I definitely see them getting over 10.5.
Right, so on to our next segment. We are looking at the teams at the bottom that are expected to struggle this season, but they have a very bright outlook further down the road. We had a brilliant response from our TSL crew in the WhatsApp group sharing their thoughts. So I'll read through their answers shortly. But I'll kick us off here, Jack, and I'll say, yes, shock horror, I've gone with the New York Giants. I know, obviously, the over-under earlier, not expecting them to make a massive, massive jump, but based on what we've seen from them in recent years, I do genuinely believe we've got a great nucleus of young players now. You've got Dart, Scatterboo, Neighbours, Carter, Reese, etc., etc. The list goes on, and that's either side of the ball. So while I do expect them to struggle this season, I think the future is very, very bright. I think we've got a head coach now who's been there and done it. He has that stature and commanding presence and respect to sort of really lead this team. I hope his OC and his defensive coordinator deliver. That's probably a question mark that I have, and I want to see it before I believe it. But I really do have high hopes for the Giants beyond this season. Miami, the Jets, Browns, Titans, Raiders, and Saints all came into consideration for varying reasons for me. I think they all have a case to be made in this one, but it's the Giants for me. Book it in, hold me to account, put a wager on it. The Giants win the NFC East next season and then make a deep run in the playoffs. But that's my pick for this one. What did you go with?
I like it. I think my only concern with the Giants is, you sort of said, there's so much there to like and things. I think it's that there's an issue. Like I think I mentioned earlier, like, is Dart, is he going to be good enough as a quarterback to get you to where you want to be, in terms of sort of future? Or is he going to be one of those players that kind of, he's good enough for you not to move on from, but he's not good enough for you to break into like a different level? Again, I know it's early on his career and everything. We've got to kind of see how he progresses. And it's kind of similar with like Scatterboo and people like that, where I'm like, they're good, but like, could I ever truly envision them being top 5, maybe even top 10 players in their position and such? And because they're such key skill positions, I'm just a bit like with the Giants. Will you, I don't know, will you become, obviously, hopefully become better than what you've been, but will you have enough to kind of get over the line and things? So, I found it different. I think I really like the Raiders and Titans here. I just think both of them sort of probably have the bones of rosters which could take sort of leap forwards. And again, I know we haven't seen Mendoza and things like that, but maybe have the quarterbacks in play that have that potential. And it's probably just, again, down to me, maybe not seeing Dart on the same levels as a prospect for them, really. I think Browns definitely have the sort of most intriguing roster. Obviously, just missing that one key piece at quarterback, and it kind of depends what they can ultimately do there, and maybe next year and everything. How they may, what their outlook would be. Again, the rest of the rosters, I'd probably go towards the Browns. But again, the people that are leading the organization, I just don't know if I trust them. I think Dolphins, we just feel sort of the phase behind even those teams. Sort of, again, sort of this kind of is the first real year of a rebuild. So I just think we are a little bit behind probably the majority of, or sort of the rest of the NFL. And then Jets, again, I think there's a lot to like with their draft this year. I think they've got 3 first rounders next year. Again, I'm really unsure on the coaching setup, so we'll see how that plays out. But if they manage it right, which is always a huge question, again, Jets, a bit like the Browns. Again, I know lots of people are always frustrated with how they're ultimately run and everything, but they've got a lot for them. But I think if you were to sort of make me choose one, I think I would maybe go for the Raiders, just on sort of, as I said, sort of the quarterbacks there in play. They've got a few sort of Genty, Bowers, key weapons. I quite like some of the acquisitions they've done. I think they've got the bones of it. And I think they're only maybe another off season off, sort of taking that real leap. And I really like sort of Kubiak as a sort of potential, elite play caller as head coach as well. So I think I'd go for Raiders.
Just going back to Dart for a second, it scared the life out. I don't have the numbers to hand, but I was listening to a pod earlier and they were talking about the number of times he's gone to the blue tent for medical reasons. And obviously a lot of that is to do with the sort of concussion scares around him taking big hits. It actually really scared me how often he has been into the blue tent. And he was quite annoyed that he was forced to go in there in that preseason game at the weekend. But again, is that something that goes into your thinking in terms of, does he follow that tour path where maybe referees look at him differently and think, oh, he's taken a massive hit there, maybe we need to check him over because he's had this in the past?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is part of it. And again, it's all quite exciting, him and Scatterberg going, his characters and the way they play and everything is exciting. But I'm like, is there longevity in it? Is there eliteness in it? I don't know. It's so sort of full throttle, 100 miles an hour. Some things look great, some things can look pretty awful. And yeah, as I sort of say, I think that's probably where a lot of my hesitation comes, is sort of, is he going to be on the field enough and such. So yeah, as you sort of say, obviously I hope for your sake that I'm wrong, but I said I just feel as though I don't know. I think there might still be some quite big moves to happen at some point down the line for you to get there. And if you're not near the bottom, you're obviously not drafting right down the bottom, so you then just got to draft really well.
Well, we love winning a game at the end of the season for no reason
other
than ruining our draft. So, I'm sure that will happen again this year. But so going to the TSL group's comments, Daniel said the Raiders as well. Ollie went for the Giants and added that they have an excellent new head coach, a good amount of young talent to build with. Lewis picked out both the Titans and Giants. Connor also went with the Giants. Thanks for backing me up, guys. I will send you your money this afternoon. Marcos chose the Raiders as well. He said they've got a great head coach, a tight end, running back, prospective great quarterback. But he also added the Browns if they cut Deshaun Watson this year and hunt for a QB. Great young skill players and a nice defense.
Yeah.
Lewis said the Patriots. He added struggle is probably a stretch, but I think they will prove some people wrong this season. Obviously, the schedule will be much tougher, but I back the offense to go to another level with improvements to the offensive line and a healthy again Campbell with a chip on his shoulder. And that's without mentioning AJ Brown as well. He added, obviously, it's a home take, but sod a lot of yous, we're going to win it all. James said the Titans, if Cam Ward kicks on like I think he will, the Titans have a bright future. They seem to be building around him and will likely have decent picks to add to the young talent that they have accumulated this year. Dabolt should be good for Ward too. And then finally, Robert said the Jets or the Browns. There is a load of talent there, just crying out for a good quarterback. So similar picks to us and similar reasons for some of the other teams. The one I guess we didn't mention was the Patriots. I know Lewis even said himself, struggle is probably a stretch, but they have something to prove, I guess, don't they, in terms of last season wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, I wouldn't put them in consideration with all these other teams and everything, when we're sort of talking trajectory for sort of bottom dwellers, really. Is it kind of people that are kind of making big jumps and the rest of it? But yeah, they're definitely probably into the next section a little bit more in terms of teams under pressure. I feel as though they're probably more in that category. And yeah, a lot of people are expecting a big drop off for them, but I think they, that again, how well they did last year should be sort of the benchmark of what they're trying to become as a team.
So as you mentioned, next up we have players or teams under the most pressure heading into this season. And what did you go for here, Jack?
Yes, the teams, kind of considering both of them. I guess teams, the ones that initially came to mind for me were sort of Bills, Ravens, Lions, and Rams. They were the ones that sort of immediately jumped out to me. I think Rams, just because the expectation is sort of Super Bowl or nothing, or probably ring or nothing, isn't it? Just again, I think I highlighted how highly I think of them last weekend. I think Lions, I just think with the schedule they've got, and there's obviously has been talk about them having missed their window. I feel there is big pressure on them this year to kind of deliver a deep run. And then Bills and Ravens, again, I don't necessarily feel they're Super Bowl or bust, but I just feel as they've been annual contenders, but they've shaken things up. They've got new head coaches. Historically, we obviously see teams that have struggled or severely underperformed and things like that. They're the ones that change the coaching and stuff. But I think with Bills and Ravens, they're both kind of doing it from positions of strength. I quite like both of the coaching assignments that they've done or coaches that they've brought in. But I do feel as though the pressure for them, you might put the Bengals potentially in there, but when it's just sort of the pressure is there for them to really deliver sort of deep years. So I think those were probably the four when you sort of thought pressure for the teams that came to mind. Players wise, just for me, I felt sort of Jalen Hurts felt like an obvious one. I feel as though he's obviously won out over AJ Brown. Now he needs to show that he is that sort of top tier quarterback and they're right to back him. Myles Garrett will be under immediate pressure, obviously, from himself as much as anybody to win it all. And then CJ Stroud was another sort of low picking fruit sort of pick where I was just like, yeah, this year feels as though it might define his career depending how it goes. So, Bills, Ravens, Lions and Rams were sort of the teams. And then, Jalen Hurts, Myles Garrett and CJ Stroud were obvious player ones for me.
Love me a bit of low-hanging fruit, Jack. I absolutely went with CJ Stroud on this one for player under pressure. We spoke about him last week, and again, for same reasons that we discussed, I just think the way in which the Texans are built and positioned right now as a genuine contender to go all the way, if Stroud flops in any way, it could really crumble a serious team that has legitimate hopes of sort of getting all the way to the Super Bowl next year. We've spoken about the regression, particularly last season. A couple of years of his contract left, but talks haven't started over a new deal. I guess Texans sort of holding out to see him prove himself first, but a lot of pressure on his shoulders, I feel, to get back to playing the level that he was at previously. I know we said he has a better offense this season, Jaden Higgins stepping up, Tank Dell coming back and whatnot, but if he has a bad start to the season, I think that could put him in a really difficult place. So CJ Stroud for me as player most under pressure. And then for team, I've 100% gone with the Buffalo Bills, and I am piling the pressure on them myself because it's not like I've not got an agenda against them. I don't dislike them or anything. It's just I've got to that stage now where I've seen them get so close so many times, and if you're going to do it, let's see you do it. Otherwise, move out the way and let someone else come through because I'm bored of this sort of like get to the end of the road and not get there. So I know Josh Allen's got years left in him, and I don't know. I just wonder how many times can this team keep going close, falling short, going back to the well again and again. You always hear about Super Bowl windows, and I know the famous line from Joe Burrow that time was something along the lines of, the windows open for as long as I'm here. And I guess that's the same with the Bills and Allen, but can it really be the case? He's 30. He's going to start slowing up at some point. You've got to think, they've got a new stadium, new head coach, tipped to be there or thereabouts again this season. But before it was the Chiefs who kept knocking them out. Is it going to be the Texans or the Chargers who deliver their heartbreak this time around? I just think they've got to strike now, or I don't know if it will ever work out for them for a very long time after this sort of era, window, whatever you want to call it, is over with Allen.
100%. And again, I hate, when people say it's this year or never, because again, you just don't know what's going to happen. But I completely agree. It feels as though we've had, during this Chiefs dynasty or, something the Chiefs era, the contenders, Bills, Ravens, Bengals, you could sort of put in there as sort of the main sort of contenders to it. And none of them have done it. None of them have, I appreciate Bengals that 1 year, but none of them have sort of really put themselves about being able to go above the Chiefs. And, now Chiefs aren't there. I think, you kind of just want to take a bit fresh and exciting. And like you said, sort of Patriots are coming through. Again, whether or not the Texans or the Jags or whoever, Broncos, Chargers, it'd just be quite nice to kind of have a few years. So I think there is big pressure on those teams to prove that, no, their time isn't up.
So some of the responses from the TSL crew, Daniel said CJ Stroud, Jackson Dart and Kyler Murray. Ollie also said CJ Stroud. He has all the tools around him for a Super Bowl. He's fighting for a contract and he's coming off one of the worst postseasons I can even remember. Also, shout out to Mahomes because the Chiefs aren't used to missing out on the playoffs, and it will be all on him to deliver from the moment he's back on the field. And the weight of expectation will be so high from their fans. Lewis also said CJ Stroud and Justin Herbert. He went with the Rams as his team most under pressure. Connor said Dak Prescott, second highest paid player in the NFL, with only 2 playoff wins in his career. With CD, it's mental, isn't it? That with CD and Pickens, he has no excuse. Another player under pressure is Allen. He's never made it to a Super Bowl. And then finally, as well, he added to AJ Brown. He had made such a stink over not being the main guy in the Eagles over the last 2 years. that he's now the main guy in New England and he has to back it up. Marcos said the Patriots to prove last season wasn't a fluke. Bills to prove coaching change will solve everything. And Penix Jr. not to lose his job and to get cut. So Lewis added as well, Chargers and Herbert. They've got all the pieces to do something this year. And assuming they don't get hit by the injury bug again, they're going to be huge questions if they don't make a deep run into the playoffs. I often think choking claims are overblown with Herbert, but if he gets bounced without winning a playoff game again, it's going to be hard to ignore. James said Bryce Young and Marvin Harrison Jr. need to perform breakout this year, or their teams could be looking elsewhere. And finally, Robert said the Patriots, as his team most under pressure, need to follow up on the Super Bowl dud. And for player, he said Deshaun Watson and Tua are likely on their final lives.
Yeah, loads of good shouts there.
So just to wrap up today's pod then, Jack, quick news recap. We saw some impressive preseason debuts from Ty Simpson and Drew Allard in a look into the future post Matt Stafford and Aaron Rodgers for the Rams and Steelers respectively. Rookies Jeremiah Love and Jordan Tyson are dealing with injuries heading into the rest of preseason. Darren Waller is back. He's signed with the Carolina Panthers to give Bryce Young another weapon. And perhaps most relevant for you, Jack, Miami Dolphins head coach Jeff Hafley was speaking about Devon Achane's workload this season. And he's basically told him, get ready because you're going to have to put in a hell of a load of work. And I may even have to carry you off the field myself the number of times you're going to touch the ball. So guess what are your thoughts on the others? But most importantly, does that excite you over the Achane role or does that concern you?
Yeah, music to my ears as an NFL fantasy draft. He said he was going to get 40 touches a game. I think he has come back out and just sort of reiterate. He's like, guys, like, I was clearly joking to the amount of touches. But I think, again, it does sort of play into what we were talking about in terms of him really having that RB1 as a target. And he is going to get the opportunity from all the sounds of it. So, again, even if he gets 20 to 25 touches, that, we're cooking. So that was good. Good to see Darren Waller back. Obviously, again, another bit of a weird guy. But he showed last year, still very capable in the passing game. So a weapon they could definitely do. Jonathan Brooks, he's someone that we were bigging up quite early on into the preseason and everything. So, here we go. If he kind of gets the opportunity, hopefully he can just stay on the field and sort of just really start his NFL career, isn't it? It'd be good to see sort of what he can do. Jeremiah Love sounds like first game might be a sort of a doubt, but it doesn't too bad. But Jordan Tyson, that sounds like it could be sort of a couple of months or so, which would, be that proper start because, he's a high prospect. Again, I appreciate he's got a bit of injury history, but I don't think this is related to that. But all the noise coming out from him was really exciting. And, him and Olave was definitely kind of, again, a tandem that I was really excited to sort of see. And it might have some knock-on effect, good or bad for Olave. So, again, I'll be kind of monitoring that one. And then, the rookie quarterbacks, fair play to him. Again, you can only do what's in front of you and play the field that you've been given. And I think both did impress. I think Drew Aller, again, the Steelers in particular, are probably clinging to some more hope. I think, the Rams will probably hope they don't see Ty Simpson at all this year, and Stafford is fit and healthy for another deep run. But, over in Pittsburgh, again, Rodgers is who he is. I don't think there's too much of an affiliation there for him. So, Drew Aller, they're probably someone that they might be hopeful of seeing at some point. So, it'd be interesting to see.
Preseason's always hilarious to me because I'm always looking at the stat sheets and seeing rushing and passing yards and whatnot, and I'm looking at the defense on the opposite side, and it's like, who are these people? Absolutely loving life. So, but interesting stuff. Definitely one to keep an eye on. So that is a wrap on this episode of the Sunday League podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Please give the episode a like or leave a positive review if you've enjoyed it. Please also subscribe and tell a friend to help us grow the channel with our first season covering things right around the corner. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And you can also follow us across all social media at Sunday League NFL. If you're a first-time listener, or perhaps you're still thinking about joining a league next year and you want to get involved in our community of NFL fantasy football fans based in the UK, and you want to join one of our future leagues, please email us at sundayleaguenfl@gmail.com. Now, all 5 of our current leagues are full, but we will be looking to recruit more players and expand the network next season and beyond. So please do get in touch if you are interested and keen to get involved. And we've also launched the TSL Pick and Pool this season. We're still looking for more entrants to that to build the prize pool and the prize pot. So if you're interested in making your predictions and being in with a chance of winning some money, again, please email us at sundayleaguenfl@gmail.com or give us a shout on social media and we will get you hooked up and into the pool. Jack, any final thoughts before we sign off this week?
No, competitive sport, like we said, it's almost back. It's exciting stuff. And just really looking forward to the countdown, kind of, watching the clock as it ticks away.
Good stuff, mate. So we're another week closer to the new season starting. We've got plenty more content lined up between now and then. And of course, things will really start to ramp up on the channel after the big kickoff in just a few weeks' time. Please do go back and check out our fantasy rankings and other bits and pieces, previous episodes while we wait. But that is it from us for now. Thank you for listening to the Sunday League UK NFL podcast, and we will catch you next week.